2025 is shaping up to be a tough year for the Indian Air Force. First, Air Chief Marshal Amarpreet Singh went on record criticizing the main domestic aerospace company, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, for failing to deliver the homegrown Tejas fighter jet on schedule, highlighting the deep-rooted inefficiencies that continue to plague India's defense procurement system. Then, a tense four-day clash with Pakistan in May, sparked by Indian strikes on alleged militant camps in Kashmir, laid bare serious operational flaws. The Indian Air Force suffered confirmed losses, possibly including one or more of its prized Rafale. Thus, the Indian Air Force is undeniably in crisis, and is in particular grappling with an acute shortage of fighter jets, having only 29 squadrons at its disposal, the lowest number ever and way below the sanctioned strength of 42. This is especially concerning as its main regional rival, China, is pulling ahead, rapidly expanding its air fleet and building new air bases along the border. The contrast is stark, and the gap between the two countries seems to be widening. So, what lies at the heart of these struggles facing the Indian Air Force, and what steps can India take to regain its aerial edge? First, to really understand the Indian Air Force's current challenges, it's essential to take a look at its capabilities. The backbone of the IAF's combat aircraft force is the Su-30 MKI, a twin-engine heavy fighter based on Russia's flanker platform and adapted to India's needs. It's the most numerous aircraft in the fleet, with 259 units spread across 13 squadrons. The most recent addition is the French Rafale, with 36 aircraft forming 2 squadrons. Other jets currently in service include 112 Jaguars, 59 MiG-29s, 46 Mirage 2000s, and 31 Tejas Mark 1s across a variety of squadrons. In total, this brings the number of operational squadrons to 29. Here lies the first major issue, a critical shortage of squadrons. The IAF has long stated it needs 42 squadrons to effectively conduct a two-front war against China and Pakistan. But instead of moving closer to that target, the number has been steadily declining for over 3 decades, from 41 in 1996 to just 31 in 2022, and now only 29 with the retirement of the last MiG-21 squadrons in September of this year. And it may get worse, as other aging platforms like the Jaguars and MiG-29 are also slated for retirement in the coming years. Thus, the number of squadrons could drop even further, even with the planned induction of more Tejas Mark 1As and upgraded Su-30s. Another pressing issue is India's heavy reliance on foreign-made aircrafts, which raises serious concerns over sovereignty and logistical complexity. Russia, for instance, supplies critical components for the Su-30s and MiG-29s. But given Russia's close ties with China, there is uncertainty about how reliable that support would be in case of conflict between the two Asian giants. Beyond sovereignty concerns, this diverse supplier base creates massive headaches for logistics and maintenance. Take the Su-30. Despite the IAF's best efforts, its availability rate rarely exceeds 60%, well below the desired minimum of 70%. But it's not just about quantity or support, it's also about technology. India doesn't currently operate any 5th-generation fighter, while China already deploys hundreds of J-20s and is in the process of inducting the J-35. On top of that, China has recently unveiled 2 6th-gen prototypes, dubbed the J-36 and J-50, signaling a major leap in air power. In contrast, India's most advanced fighter, the Rafale, is a 4.5th generation jet. While equipped with modern sensors and strong electronic warfare systems such as the infamous Spectra, even the French admit it cannot reliably take on 5th-gen stealth fighters. And it's expensive. India bought its 36 Rafales for around 7.8 billion euros, a price tag that includes support, training and ammunitions, but the individual cost of each aircraft is still over 90 million euros. Yet the Rafale is no wonder weapon, as proved by its poor showing against Pakistan. And given India's relatively limited defense budget, it could end up being a luxury that the IAF cannot really afford at the moment. Incidentally, it could be instructive to compare India's procurement to Russia, as both countries have relatively similar military budget in dollar, at least before the war in Ukraine. Yet, contrary to India, Russia manufactures all of its jets and can thus leverage the low manufacturing cost in the country to buy its equipment at a much lower price. For instance, the Su-57 was estimated at 3 billion rubles or around 35 million euros, and the Su-35 at 2 billion rubles or only 25 million euros for the Russian Air Force. Last but not least, there is the issue of trained personnel. The IAF is facing a growing shortage of fighter pilots, with the gap rising from 486 in 2015 to 596 by 2021. Outdated training infrastructure and a high accident rate, often due to human error, only make the problem worse. Together, these challenges paint a clear picture. The Indian Air Force is overstretched, under-equipped, and facing a rapidly evolving regional environment it may struggle to keep up with. There is, however, a simple solution to most of the Indian Air Force's problems: indigenization. Indeed, if India could design and manufacture its own fighter jets, like other major powers, it would first gain full control over the design and manufacturing processes of the jets and could then tailor them to its specific needs. Besides, it would also no longer be dependent on foreign suppliers, increasing its sovereignty and simplifying logistics. More importantly, it could, like Russia, leverage the relatively low cost of manufacturing in the country to reduce the price of the jets, enabling the Indian Air Force to acquire more total aircrafts. Finally, local production would create many jobs and boost the local economy. And this isn't a new idea. India has been working towards self-reliance for decades, with efforts intensifying under the Make in India initiative. But how successful have these attempts been? One flagship program is the light combat aircraft Tejas. Launched in the 1980s to replace the aging MiG-21s, it's aimed to build not just a fighter jet, but an entire ecosystem of homegrown technologies. Some successes were achieved in areas like fly-by-wire systems and composite materials, but delays plagued the program and the Tejas Mark I only became fully operational in 2019, over 2 decades behind schedule. To keep the Tejas relevant, India developed the Mark I-A, with improved radar and electronics. 170 jets have been ordered, but deliveries are now delayed again, this time due to engine supply issues. The Tejas Mark II is in development, yet the long delay meant the MiG-21 stayed in service far too long, and even the Air Chief has hinted that the Tejas may already be nearing obsolescence. The cavalry engine project, intended to power the Tejas, also failed in its original goal, though it may still power the Gatak UAV in the future. So while it is true that the Tejas program did help India develop core technologies, it failed in its original goal of providing India with a cheap, locally made fighter jet that could be produced in large numbers and allow the IAF to reach its target number of operational squadrons. Why did this happen? A combination of factors can explain this failure, including bureaucratic mismanagement, political interference, funding constraints, and crucially a work culture not optimized for high-speed development, as even the Air Chief remarked that HAL was not operating in mission mode. And while India struggled, others raced ahead. Newcomers in aerospace technologies, such as South Korea and Turkey, are now developing their own 5th-gen fighters, and even Pakistan's JF-17, co-developed with China, has entered service in large numbers. India now has its sights set on an even more ambitious goal: the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, a 5th-generation fighter targeted for induction by 2035. However, this raises concerns about whether India is once again overreaching. The country is better prepared this time, with more experience and several indigenous components already developed. Yet, the key question remains: Have the institutional bottlenecks that plague the Tejas been addressed? If not, the IMCA could face the same fate: delays, cost overruns, and limited success. So, what is the way forward? As we have seen, relying solely on indigenous solutions like the Tejas is still risky. A major test will be whether HAL can deliver the 170 Tejas Mark 1A on time. Even then, it's not enough, as many aircrafts are set to retire soon, and India will likely need to import jets, especially 5th generation ones, since the indigenous AMCA is still a long way from being operational. This leaves India with 3 main options: French, Russian, or American. One option is to buy more Rafales. India already has the infrastructure in place, which could reduce costs for additional units. However, Rafales remain expensive and are not 5th-gen fighters. Recently, India approved the purchase of 26 Rafale Marine for its navy, signaling its appreciation for the aircraft, but its poor performance against Pakistan may change the situation. Another path is to turn to Russia, another long-time defense partner. India was once part of the FGFA program to co-develop a variant of the Su-57 for the IAF, but pulled out, citing high costs and limited stealth. Still, the Su-57, thanks to its engagement in Ukraine, is now combat-proven and technically attractive, though expensive and possibly overlapping with the IMCA. The Su-75 offers a cheaper alternative, using Su-57 tech and projected to cost just $30 million, but it hasn't flown yet and production is unlikely before 2027. A surprising third option emerged recently with President Trump hinting at offering the F-35 to India. Technologically advanced, the F-35 would boost the IAF even in small numbers, but it's costly, has maintenance and availability issues, and raises concerns over sovereignty, especially given the current spat between India and the US over tariffs. The poor showing of the Indian Air Force against Pakistan clearly highlighted the urgent need for more and better combat aircrafts. India's current ruling party, the BJP, seems to favor cooperation with France and even the US over Russia, which, for its part, is traditionally closer to the opposition Congress party. However, after the Rafale's lackluster performance against Pakistan, the Russian Su-57 is once again catching the attention of the Indian Air Force. According to recent reports, the IAF is considering buying at least 2 squadrons of the 5th generation stealth jet, and even looking into producing more units under license in India. If that happens, it could give the IAF's fighter fleet the major boost it desperately needs. Ultimately, this crisis reflects a deeper issue, one that has plagued the IAF for decades now: India's indecisiveness and inability to reconcile its strictly military imperatives, particularly in terms of the number of operational squadrons, with its desire to stimulate the local aerospace industry and to rely more on indigenous aircrafts like the Tejas. This clash between the two imperatives is now leaving the IAF in a difficult situation, especially as tensions with Pakistan are still high, and unless radical decisions are made, it will likely remain so in the near future.